these will be recorded. Teresa, could you please list our, is it all attendees or just the online attendees that needed to be listed?
I guess, like, I know anyone who's shown up has signed in, or if you haven't, if you wouldn't mind. And I guess it depends at the leisure of council what your preference is. We usually record them all on the minutes, the written minutes after the fact. So.
Okay, list them off.
Okay. So I have Foreman Patrick Taylor, and then I have Liz Armitage with the Senior Planning. I have Loretta Paget as a recording secretary, myself, CAO Teresa Fuller. I have Councillor Cindy Oram, and then I have Mayor Rob McDonald, Councillor Jackie Northey, Councillor Kyle McIntosh, and Deputy Mayor Brian Gust, and then in the, well, at the presentation table, I have our auditor, Scott St. Arnaud. Okay. And then in the galley, sorry, you guys have probably helped me out. I know a couple of you, but I don't want to screw up anybody's name.
Lisa Turca.
Okay.
Shelley Boileau. Nita Salter.
Okay, thank you. And then online, I have Crystal. I don't appear to have a last name for you, Crystal. If you'd be so kind as to mention what your last name is. Yes, no? Or should I just guess that it's Brownstead? I have Lucy Smolsick. I have Stu Sackelt. And then, of course, the town of Bashaw as recording.
Thank you, Teresa. No public hearing, so we'll move on to the agenda. Any additions or amendments? Okay. Somebody care to move the agenda?
Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. All in favor? Carried. Minutes of the last meeting. Everybody had a chance to peruse them.
Just clear the minutes appear to be in order, so I move that you adopt the minutes of April 4th, 2022.
Thank you, Kyle. All in favor? Motion's carried. No delegation, no bylaw. Item 7.1, our financial audit. It's all yours, Scott.
Sorry to get a draft up. Through here, so if you have any questions. We'll skip on by the title page and the table of contents. Go to the management's responsibility for financial reporting. So that came in a few years back. It's essentially management acknowledges their responsibility for the financial reporting of the financial statements. So that's their sign off on the statements. And then if you go to the next page, that's the independent auditor's report. So that's our report attached to the statements where we sign off. As per usual, it's a clean opinion, no qualifications, no items to make note of. Essentially states that the financial statement figures are presented fairly and materially correct in accordance with public sector accounting standards. Also states that internal controls are management's responsibilities. We do test internal controls, we do document, and we do provide feedback. We won't necessarily uncover fraud. Of course, being deception can be hard to uncover. Didn't have any concerns with fraud. We'll go on to the numbers. A couple pages past, or a page past the auditor's report. Statement of financial position, essentially your balance sheet. I'll just go line by line, give you some highlights. So cash and short-term investments, you'll see they're down about 350,000, 360,000. Of these total funds, we can see in note 3 on page 17 the details. those funds. Sorry, page 18. Yeah, so about $280,000 cash and $950,000 in short-term investments. The investments are just deposits maturing in January 2022, so they've already matured, been reinvested. Now, of the total cash and short-term investments, council has designated funds, 566,000 approximately, to restricted for future projects. As well included in those funds is restricted amount of approximately $98,000 for grant funding received, plus $6,927 of tax sale proceeds that have yet to clear. So overall, about 660,000, half that is restricted, the rest unrestricted. While we're on this page, we might as well look at the next few notes. Taxes, receivable. So of course we have the current, and then we have the arrears, which are more than a year old. You'll notice that the arrears is down about 13,000 as an account with a long-standing account was collected. Overall, reviewing taxes receivable last year, of course, with COVID, there was some deferrals and so forth, and slower payment. So better collection, a little bit better times this year. The trade and other, so up about $500,000, as you can see, mostly grant funding, wastewater partnership grants, gas tax, the ICIP. Overall, everything there was in order. I think we'll head back to page 3 or page 4, sorry, statement of financial position. So down to the liabilities, as you can see here, accounts payable, your short-term payable is pretty much in line with last year. Nothing really out of the ordinary in the makeup. There was one government program where you're returning the funds or shouldn't have received them, but they're being returned. Deferred revenue, it's about double. You'll see the details of that in note 8, page 19. So that is made up of federal gas tax funds that you bet the receiver spend, the municipal stimulus program, and then operating capital funds from MSI. Due to Highway 1221, that's payable for your share of the debentures of Highway 1221. No new debentures, all payments made, total payments per year, $24,859. Back to page 4 for a second there. You'll see your financial assets less liabilities is your net financial assets, which is 1.8 million approximately. Fairly consistent with the prior year, up about 36,000. No concerns there. Able to pay your short-term liabilities. Schedule capital assets. If we go to schedule 2, probably page 9, because I say it's 8. You'll see a breakdown of your tangible capital assets, land, buildings, etc., engineered structures being the main one. And you'll see the additions in the year. So under engineered structures, about 814,000 spent. That was the lagoon project. The machinery equipment, that was a rotary cutter, and the vehicles was a ladder truck. There was some disposals in the year, old recycling baler, server, couple trucks. Nothing out of the ordinary, normal purchase or replacement machinery equipment. Now, to fund those purchases of capital, approximately 850,000 spent. We've used 286,000 of ICIP investing in Canada infrastructure grant funds, MSI capital funds. So, yeah, so the whole amount was funded by grants. And the other two items, about $40,000 worth, used by reserve or funded by reserves. So go back to page 4 again. Couple more notes there. Prepaid expenses under non-financial assets up about 10,000. There was some water meters purchased to replace, and they weren't installed yet, so we haven't expensed them. Inventory is gravel and sand, normal usage. You'll notice your land held receipt for resale value went down by the cost of a couple lots sold. I think we sold $55,000 worth of lots was the retail sale price. Accumulated surplus, we'll see the details of that. Schedule 1. That should be page 8. So it's made up of 3 funds. Your unrestricted, and then your restricted, which council has made by motion to restrict certain funds for future expenditures. And then your equity and tangible capital assets, which in your case is just simply the original cost less the accumulated depreciation of the organization. So of course, your equity tangible capital assets will go up by whatever you bought less whatever you disposed of less your amortization. Whereas restricted surplus really depends from year to year on what council decides to allocate to that fund or to fund projects, or what this, if they want to fund projects out of that. So it could fluctuate or stay the same. I think we'll head to page 5, statement of operations. I'll give you some highlights of certain ones that caught my eye. Property taxes, of course, your biggest item. There was an increase in non-residential taxes. Assessable values were up by about 1.12%. The mill rate was essentially flat comparable to the prior year, so just a slight increase there. The government transfers for operating, so those are your grants used to fund operating expenditures. There was some funding in relation to COVID expenses in the prior year. The decrease of 53,000, mostly in provincial government grants. There were some MSI operating funds carried forward to 2022 this year. They weren't all spent or taken into income. Sales of goods and user fees. So that's up about 73,000. We did sell the 2 lots for $54,000. That's included in there. There's an increase in water usage by businesses in town. So increase in water sales there. And that wasn't anticipated in the budget either item. So that's why the budget is lower. Hard to anticipate both those. Investment income. Interest rates are down, and you also have less invested and tied up for longer periods, mostly short-term investing. Keep liquid, so you're not earning a lot of interest. Budget was conservative, of course. Rentals, there's a new cell tower, get about $10,000 from that for Rogers. Expenses. Legislative, pretty consistent. Administration, pretty close to budget. Prior year, there was an admin employee gone for about half the year. There's no replacement. This year, there was some overlap between the previous municipal treasurer and the new one, so wages were up a bit during that transition. Fire, there was less fire calls overall. Good thing. Streets up about 28,000 from the prior year. There was some asphalt patching, some sidewalk replacement that was different from the prior year. Water, wastewater, up 124,000. Again, the increased water sales or increased water purchases. As well, you did replace many water meters, so that's in there. Salaries also up because the water meter replacements. And the budget, those items were reflected in the capital budget as opposed to the operating. The water purchases and water meter replacements. Let's see. SCSS, waste management, pretty comparable. Recreation, up about 40,000. Arena roof. That'd be redone. Again, that's in the capital budget. So overall, you'll see a deficit of about $489,000 before capital grants. And of course, included in that deficit is expense of $440,000 of amortization, which is non-cash, so not spent. So overall, probably about a $50,000 cash. Now the capital grants, about $928,000. Those, of course, would be your ICIP grant, MSI capital grant, so forth to fund the lagoon. So overall, revenue over expense about $440,000. Of course, you'll see the big difference why it's up so much between the government transfers. Extra $600,000 there, government transfers. And of course, we do have the water meter replacements and so forth in the expenses this year. The next page. Essentially, it's a reconciliation. Take your opening net financial assets, your assets and liabilities, to get to your ending net financial assets and liabilities this year. So we've covered a lot of items in here, the capital purchases, what they were, how much, amortization, and so forth. So overall, don't really have any further comments on that report. The next page is similar, statement of cash flows. Essentially adjusting your net operating revenue for cash, non-cash items such as amortization, and then the increase, decrease in all the balance sheet items. So overall, your net cash provided by your operating activities is pretty consistent. at 500,000. Then, of course, coming out of that is your purchase of capital assets, infrastructure, so forth. An overall reconciliation to your ending cash balance. So a lot of the next few pages we've kind of already covered. So I'll bring you to Schedule 5 on page 11. So top part just breaks down your grants or government transfers by type, where they come from: federal, provincial, local. The second schedule, just another breakdown of expenses, just a different way, by object instead of function. So I'll bring you line by line on those. Salaries overall pretty comparable to the prior year. Increase in some functions, decrease in others. Spent more time on water replacement, lagoon, right? So that's gone up, and less time on others. You'd have an increase in staff. So contracted services, that would include the roof replacement. That's one of the big ticket items. Materials, goods, and supplies. I had greater tires in there. Water purchases are up, and our purchases of water up, and then the water meters were purchased. Rest of that schedule pretty comparable for the rest of the line items. We'll go to the next page. Get another way to look at your financial results, just by each function, by revenue expense, by object for each function. So I like to look at the bottom to see what the net revenue or deficit is this year compared to last. So general government, so a decrease about $70,000 in net revenue, which I attributed mostly to where grants were being allocated. So the main culprit would be to use some of your MSI operating funds this year. They were applied, they're carried forward to 2022. Protective services, even though it's a decrease in deficit of 28,000. It's just kind of a allocation between the revenue and expenses, just slight changes in each one to get you there to that 28,000 difference. Transportation deficit up about 300,000. There was no grant funding utilized for the street function this year. Environmental use of protection. Of course, you have all the capital grant funding used for water, wastewater. Public health and welfare are pretty comparable. Planning and development, you had the 2 lot sales in there. Recreation deficit is up. You have the $40,000 roof repair. Main culprits. The next part of the statements is all the notes. Pretty standard accounting policy notes under public sector accounting standards. I'll just briefly mention a few. 1C, use of estimates. So we do have some measurement uncertainty regarding any reclamation liability for gravel. We have estimated as best we can in conjunction with management and best practice. But there's a possibility it's helped somewhat. Of course, investment in high 1221. Depends on their operations and how profitable they are. Note 2E, so that's page. Actually, it's note 2G. Asset retirement obligations. That's the only one that's really of concern in regards to having to account for any liabilities of retirement of any asset, specifically if you had an old building that had asbestos in it or something similar to that. We need to account for that and report a liability for it for any fiscal years beginning on or after the first 22. I'll skip all the way to note 12. That's page 20. That just shows a breakdown of where council has allocated the restricted funds, where they're meant to be spent. Note 14. That's just the salary benefits disclosure, so that's a required disclosure under the standards. Note 16, next page. Debt limits, I always show that, so I always bring that up. The town has the ability to borrow up to $2.8 billion for capital projects.
No.
Really noted.
Note 19, couple pages forward. Just like to bring attention to the contingency that the town has guaranteed a bank loan at the Bashaw Golf Country Club. And the present balance of that loan, $152,000. Note 20 is just a breakdown of the amortization by function. And that's about it. Overall, again, I don't see any alarm bells. Facing the same challenges every small community, replacing infrastructure, sewer, water, roads, highly dependent on grant funding and being able to put funds away. Continual challenge.
Yep.
Doesn't take long to spend $1 million on that.
No, it sure doesn't. Anybody have any questions?
Sure.
What are transportation services? What kinds of things at the end of there?
Oh, that's roads and streets.
Okay, thank you. That's all I
Outdated
wondered. I
term.
just didn't know what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So new
I
hours.
know I scratched my head a little bit, too, but I'm like,
Yeah, thank you. That's good, thanks.
Anyone else? Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, you got it.
Do we need a motion to accept this as information?
we need a motion to accept the financial audit.
As presented.
Thank you, Jackie. All in favor?
And before we close, we need signatures.
Yeah. Quite a few. So this one you can sign.
It's cool.
It's really essential, but it will be different.
This one would be Rob.
you.
We have a couple metric tons of items.
And
Okay.
Yep. Great. Thank you.
this one. Yeah. This one is your mouth copy.
Is the other one supposed to say?
I think that one was me. Perfect.
That it?
Yep. I think. Let's see if he's got more.
And this one here. It's a standard reference.
Yeah, yeah.
State secretary. You're fine. And that's- This one. This one here is the audit fund.
He doesn't want to be on that. He just thinking. It's just big.
More
He
opportunities.
loves it.
More opportunities. Oh, there's better paid.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
This one is, that's the audit findings. Executive statement last year. Has the,
This one is a disclosure. Basically, he's saying that they didn't find anything new than what they found last year, but you're certainly to welcome to have a quick perusal.
Well, on the other side, see, it's not.
Yes, it's just part of it. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
There you go.
that one's for me. You got copies. Okay. That's it. Water, sign water.
Thank you, Scott.
You bet, you're
Yes,
welcome.
thanks, Scott. Drive safe.
You bet. We'll take her slow.
Yeah.
Which way are you going?
Gonna go to Statler, so. East-west is okay.
So north, south,
Coming up north on 56.
not so good.
All right, well, thanks.
See ya. Okay, moving on. Item 7.2, development permit application number 2022-1.
Development permit number 20221 is for a property located at 5340 51st State Street. The application is for the Barry Hills Family Wellness Center. The application was submitted by James Carpenter, Dr. Tony Mucciarone, Lucy Smolcic, and Audrey Ward. Musqueam First Nations have expressed support for the proposed project. The property is designated as direct control as per the town bylaw and states that the development authority in the direct control district shall be the council. The applicant began discussions regarding this application in November of 2021. And due to the complex nature of this application, the town has requested the services of the City of Planning and Engagement, Elizabeth Armitage, registered personal planner. What's the other alphabet?
Registered professional planner.
Okay,
I don't
professional.
plan anyone's personal life.
Perfect. Thank you for that.
Member of Canadian Institute of Planners.
And so therefore, she's a registered professional planner and was recruited to provide advice to administration and town council on processing the application in accordance with the Municipal Government Act. The application was submitted January 10th and has went through several reviews and evaluations. 4 incomplete letters have been provided based on the following dates. And council provided a review, or completed a review on the application on March 7th. And the council approved issuing the incomplete letter on March 15th. Application materials and incomplete letters were presented in the March 7th, 2022 agenda package. Additional commentary on the application is also available in the March 7th, 2022 agenda package. And so on April 1st, the applicant provided additional information in hard copy format. The administration requested the information be provided digitally. On April 4th, 2022, Mr. Carpenter's email response stated the materials would not be submitted digitally and are not to be shared publicly. Due to the restrictions provided to administration on the materials submitted, administration is unable to share the materials with council to review and consider. Therefore, at this time, administration recommends that council require the information outlined in motion 041-2022 on March 7, 2022 be required in digital format, and that all information be provided with the written understanding that the materials will be shared with council at a public council meeting as deliberations on a direct control development permit, and they will occur in public. And as a council, as per the MGA, all council decisions are made by motion or bylaw, and therefore the deliberations must occur in public. As council does not have access to the materials submitted on April 21st, 2022, administration believes council does not have enough information to make an informed decision. Over the weekend, we did receive additional submission from the applicant on Saturday, and therefore we have not had time to review the submission. Community engagement consideration. Administration continues to recommend council consider holding a Bashaw community information session upon receipt of publicly available information. In the spirit of reconciliation, the community information session should be held jointly with a Musqueam elder and Musqueam service providers. Such a meeting will provide a formal venue to Bashaw residents to submit feedback directly to council and ask additional questions of the actual applicants. Administration is currently seeking the services of a third party to help support the invitation of the Musqueam elders to a meeting. As administration does not have experience in arranging these meetings, we need to be sure it is done correctly. And it is also compounded by delays with staff being out of the office and also medically unavailable. Administration recommends council consider the following two options. Council issue the attached incomplete letter which reiterates the requirements council previously indicated in motion 0412222. Require that the materials must be submitted in both hard copy and digital formats, and that the applicant must acknowledge in writing that all materials submitted will be disclosed publicly in a future council meeting. Or option 2, refuse the application citing the reasons for the refusal. And then there's the additional motion recommendations.
Well, speaking for myself, I don't think I'm at all inclined to review any of this in camera. I think in the spirit of transparency and good governance, it all has to happen in a public forum. That's my personal opinion anyway. Not sure how the rest of you feel.
Has there been a request to submit this to closed session?
Components of the additional submissions are basically stating that operational and business plan information would be shared by the applicant directly with council as an in-camera portion of the application.
In response to the,
That was a portion of what I've reviewed a little bit, but truly, from what we've received on Saturday, we haven't reviewed it in any great detail.
So given the fact that we have received a fairly sizable submission in paper format, and there is some stuff that has been sent digitally over the weekend, are we in a position right now to deem the application complete so that we can actually move forward with reviewing this application? Because like, I know I, for one, would like to just actually see what's in there. And, I know Councillor McIntosh made a motion at our December meeting that said we look forward to reviewing this application. So is there anything we can do at this point from our end to push this forward?
Teresa, do you want me to answer?
Yes, please.
So this report was drafted based on the information we had last week.
Okay.
Which was that the information, we were told via email in writing that it is not to be shared publicly. Council meetings are held in public. There are times where council can choose to go in camera. That is a council decision. Only council can make that decision. No one can tell you to go in camera. No one can make you go in camera. Council gets to choose if they want to. So two components about this are, first, it's your choice if you want to look at stuff in camera. Second, the materials that we received prior to this weekend were very clear that they were not to be shared publicly. And so it's my opinion as a professional land use planner that when council is looking at a development permit, that is typically done in public, in a public session. So it is my recommendation that the materials be submitted to be reviewed in public. That said, over the weekend, we received additional information. I believe it went to Teresa and to the mayor as well. We have not reviewed that. In looking at, I think it was one of the cover letter, maybe it said that materials could be shared via email, but council doesn't do business via email. Council does business through agendas, which is in front of all of us here. So typically those materials would be put into an agenda. Council would be able to review them in that forum. And I do believe, and again, we have not reviewed all of this material in one day. It's a substantial amount, I believe, over 1,000 pages. I'm a quick reader, but I'm not that quick.
I'm just going to cut you off. I'm not going to tolerate any interruptions tonight. So you're here to observe. You're here to observe, and it's an open meeting to the public to observe, but I won't tolerate any interruptions.
I can try to speak a bit louder. So ultimately, I've lost my train of thought, but I'll get it back. Ultimately, we have not reviewed the materials that came in this weekend. It was a weekend, staff aren't working, and it was also a long weekend. So it was not actually received the emails until this morning. And so we are not in a position where we can really comment on what is in there. I don't feel that under the Municipal Government Act, we have to send out either a complete or an incomplete letter within 20 days of receipt of information. So based on what we had when we put together the staff report, based on the April 1st submission and the email that indicated no digital submissions on April 4th, we are here tonight to say it needs to be another incomplete letter. The submission that came in on the weekend, if this letter goes out and we get the information and we get, which is included in this letter as well, a digital copy and a hard copy and a written acknowledgement for public release of materials at a future public council meeting, then we would be in a position to issue a complete letter. Again, we need to get all that material. We need time to review it. So we cannot review it, this substantial amount of information in this less than a day.
Basically, you know, the holdup is that we need some sort of authorization releasing the information so that we can review it. Because I mean, I do think we've got an invested, you know, community that is interested in hearing it and does want to review it. And so I believe we've got people that don't want us to do this in camera. They want the transparency. So we need the applicants to release the information in order for us to be able to sit here and actually look at this.
So-
Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes,
Okay.
it's very atypical in my experience. I can actually say I've never had an applicant say information cannot be released publicly.
Okay.
Typically, when we issue a development permit, if it's administrative, it's swipeable once we've issued the permit because it's public domain now. So the only difference with council looking at it is you're reviewing the information before the development permit would be issued. But it becomes public once you're issuing a permit for that information. So it is very standard. Again, in my career, I've never been told that information can't be
So
released.
even at that, it's almost like as long as the information remains private, if you were to issue the development permit, the information becomes public anyway. So there's that impasse there.
And typically, if it's FOIP'd at that point, it's back up to a development permit. My understanding would be that it would be considered public. So ultimately, if council does want to review parts in camera, that would be a council decision. The recommendation in tonight's letter that we're recommending council issue is clear that it needs to be in public. And basically, we've heard as administration that there is a lot of interest in this on both sides of support and against. And so we are recommending that the deliberations occur in public.
Well, I think in my opinion, I believe I would only want it done in public because we've been facing online comments and posts for a long time now, 2 or 3 months, and we haven't even had the opportunity to actually look at the information. And yet they're already the narrative is already that we're discriminatory or whatever, right? And I think that the consequence for that kind of narrative is that it's important that material now gets to be seen publicly so that when I make a decision and vote, everybody knows what I'm voting on and everybody has seen what I'm voting on, and it's not privately done in council, regardless of what my vote is. And I also think that this isn't how we work together in this community. We haven't for a very long time. And what we do as a community is we prioritize the community development, and we prioritize family resiliency in our community, and our organizations and our businesses and our agencies all work together, and they talk to each other, and we have conversations, and we learn from each other, we share the risks, we do a lot of things together. And I feel like this has gone way off base for me as a person who works in this committee and has for 35 years, and I really want it public. I want to be able to look at it publicly and discuss it publicly because I'm not willing to have somebody else have the narrative on that. I'm just not. So that's it.
I do want to add one more thing about the incomplete and complete letter. We talked about it at the last council meeting I was at. It is a Municipal Government Act requirement. It sounds intimidating when someone gets an incomplete letter, but it is literally just a letter that says, hey, we still need more information. We can do this 400 times if we have to. We don't want to. But we can continue to do this. And ultimately, once the deadline, which we've recommended we continue with May 9th, if that passes without the information, it would be deemed incomplete. And then you'd have to wait another however long the land use bylaw states to be able to reapply. But this process is normal. It is governed by the provincial government. This is not a process that is unique to Bashaw. It's new in that it was brought into the Municipal Government Act in about 2018, but it's across the province. So this is not something unique to Bashaw. It is our goal to be able to issue a complete letter. That is always our goal. And typically we get there pretty quick, and we just haven't with this application, and that's unfortunate, but again, it is our desire to have a complete